All right. Well, here we are with full self-driving, starting with the big story where Kaitlyn had a link and I felt the need to add some more. Something's
Yes.
wrong with the Teslas.
Yes, right at the last minute, I just noticed Sam had a bunch more
Well,
links.
in my opinion, you didn't really get to the most important thing that was wrong with the Teslas, but let's hear it.
Well, I thought the most interesting. I knew there were a bunch of things going on with the Teslas, but I thought the most interesting thing was the seatbelt chimes. So
They call it for that, which like
which is yeah, which is the most minorist thing ever, but it's really interesting about how this happened. So there's an article on Engadget by Jay Fingus, good old Fingus, where he writes about how Tesla is recalling over 800,000 of their cars because there was a software bug, not a hardware bug, a software bug, which they are planning to do an over-the-air update for.
So is that even a recall? When you don't take the car back, you just push an update?
No, they are recalling. They have issued a recall.
What does that mean? That means you're actually driving to the dealer? And
you're going to drive it to the dealer.
Because of the seatbelt chimes.
Because of the seatbelt chimes. It is a software error. So, and they are planning on pushing on over-the-air update sometime this month. There are no reports of injuries, but they still have to recall over 800,000 Teslas.
Oh, because it doesn't chime to remind you forgot to put on seatbelt.
Only once in a while. So like apparently it's a bug in the logic. So if you like open the door, close the door, open it up again while the car is off, like you can get the chime not to work, but the lights and everything that warn you that you're not wearing a seatbelt works. But anyways, it's just a software bug. It's just a simple software bug. And they have to just recall all these automobiles. And I thought that's so interesting because it really goes to show you really need to test your software.
Why do they need to recall them for such a
I think it's just the law. I think if there's a fault in your automobile, even if it's fixable with an over-the-air update, you have to make sure that all the cars get that over-the-air update, and you can't do that remotely. You don't know which cars got it or not. And so they just said, we're going to recall all the cars, apparently.
Probably law.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought even though, there's a bunch of things going on with the Teslas, which I'll get to in a second. I thought that was the most interesting because it's so ridiculous.
Well, this happened to me on an airplane. I was on an airplane and they didn't take off. And they said, there's a problem with the airplane and we have to resolve it. And then they like half hour went by and they said, we can't find anybody that knows which form to fill out. And then the problem was these big, guys with tools came in. One of the seatbelts didn't work on one of the arms didn't lift up on one of the chairs. So they came in and put like yellow tape on that chair, but this took like more than an hour to resolve.
Well, yeah, airplanes are a special case. So people might not know this, but every time an airplane lands, it needs to go through a full inspection before lifting off again. So that means, that means that they look at the engine. They not only refuel, they test the flaps. And you've seen this if you've ever been like in a 747. There's a little car that wheels the airplane out from its parking spot. Remember that airplanes can't go in reverse, so that has to be dragged off in reverse. And then before you do anything, the airplane will, test the engine, test the flaps. The airplanes go through this huge checklist before it can get anywhere near the runway.
Yeah.
And so, even if there's just like a faulty seat, because if there's a faulty seat and the arm doesn't go up and there's a crash, someone can get stuck. And I think that's the issue. So
apparently the theory,
So airplanes are a special case where everything just has to work, or they cannot get clearance to get off the ground, even if it's something stupid like a broken seatbelt. But this is not a broken seatbelt. The seatbelt works fine on the Teslas.
Yeah.
It's just that the chime needed a software update. And
I imagine there's a law saying you must warn them if they didn't put on the seatbelt, and therefore it's out of compliance.
Yeah.
But it's got a lot of worse things.
Right. And so there's a lot of worse things going on with the Tesla as usual. And this is nothing new. We've all known about the other stuff going on with the Teslas. And like I said, Sam, you just threw these upon me at the last minute, so I haven't had time to go through all these articles.
I figured I'd say something. I didn't know this. If you're driving your Tesla at highway speed, it will just randomly slam on the brakes and make a panic stop in the middle of the highway.
Sometimes, yes.
I didn't know about that. And people are complaining, saying, hey, this is not right. And I would tend to agree. This is not right.
Yeah, that's not.
The other thing it'll do is if there's a parked emergency vehicle blinking lights, it won't stop and just ram right into it because the blinking lights apparently make it think that that's moving. And
Oh,
so,
like that's a problem.
yeah, so the police.
That's not a real problem. Like that's not as big of a problem as the seatbelt, though, Sam.
Well,
Imagine if you got in your car and it didn't beep when you didn't have your seatbelt on.
I know. And then somebody actually, they tested the full self-driving. So someone posted a video of him going through, like, I think San Francisco with the full self-driving on. And he said, this is horrible. He said, it keeps on steering like right over to hit a car and right over to hit a person. And he's constantly grabbing the wheel. He said, this stuff is not ready at all. This is terrible.
Yeah, but I mean, but could you imagine if you ran over a person and you forgot to put your seatbelt on because it didn't chime?
You could get hurt.
You could get hurt. I
But,
know.
You know,
yeah.
not a Tesla, but I just read a story, I think yesterday, about cruise automation rolling out full self-driving taxi in San Francisco. So
I hope it's using better software than Tesla. What I read was the problem is Tesla took away a lot of sensors. It used to have like 3 different kinds of sensors, and they decided, I guess, to cut costs by switching to nothing but cameras. And they said the failure to have different types of sensors is why it gets confused about whether something is in front of it or not, or whether something is moving or not.
Yeah, you would think in something like a car. We were talking about how in aviation you have to go through every time you take off, check every little thing. Yeah, and airplanes have so many fail safes, right? Like if you're in an airplane and let's say your everything, usually you have like a heading dial on your dashboard. If that fails, there's always a secondary compass like you can always refer to. So if your electronic compass dies, you have this analog old compass you can refer to.
And I would think that these cars would have redundant systems, but they don't.
They used to have like LiDAR and radar and a camera. And they said, oh, we don't need that. We can cut costs by not having all that.
Yeah, and I know we were joking about how the regulations are making them recall these cars, but we really need these regulations, because if the government does not say these cars need, door chimes for the seatbelts and stuff like that, then stuff like the, companies will try to skim on things like the sensors for their automatic driving, which makes things more unsafe. And what if one of the cameras gets muddy?
Yeah,
I mean, like you need backups upon backups upon backups if you're going to have a self-driving car that's,
So are you guys not going to sign up for the fully autonomous taxi rides? Because
I want to.
I wanted to.
You can.
It's awesome.
I used to want
yourself on the list to take a fully autonomous, no backup driver ride in San Francisco.
I know a couple of years ago, I probably would have been first in line, but now I'm thinking I'll just wait a bit.
I might wait a week, but then I want to be first in line.
I mean, sadly enough, I feel like it's safer than riding a bike in the city anymore.
Well, I rode a bike in the city for like 15 years, and a car never hurt me except one time I rammed a car. But
yeah, I had the same experience, Sam. I hit a car with my bike. That was not good. Anyway.
Yeah, but in fact, the cars were not a danger. I managed to just hurt myself all by myself a few times, but cars were not a problem.
I had some close calls on the bike in the city.
Well, in Texas, it was another story. You go riding a bike in Texas, those people are a lot less friendly about it.
Yeah, you truly have to have a death wish to ride your bike around Dallas.
Well, I did it, but I learned the trick. You watch where the 10-year-old children go. They have figured out how you get places on a bike. And then you follow the kids, but of course, not too close or you could get another problem. But anyway, so Alan has discovered something about Trump.
Well, the New York Times is reporting in an article, and this was published a few days ago on January 31st, they've published more details on what Trump was doing to try to overturn the election prior to January 6th, the insurrection on January 6th.
Mm-hmm.
And like all the stories about Trump these days, it seems like there just isn't much interest in it. And the details are small sometimes, but significant. And this story, I would say the details aren't so small. It turns out that according to various eyewitnesses that interviewed with the New York Times, on December 18th of 2020, Trump had Sidney Powell, the disgraced lawyer, General Flynn, in his office. And in this meeting, they suggested that the military, the US military, seize voting machines from certain states where the results were unfavorable to President Trump, which is a pretty serious undertaking. And so Trump called in Rudy Giuliani into his office. Giuliani was nearby.
Well, that'll fix everything.
Yes, and for once, Giuliani was actually the voice of reason, and he talked Trump out of using the military to seize voting machines.
You know, this is probably why the military made that letter. It got a whole bunch of generals to sign a letter saying, we are not going to allow the military to be used against US citizens to overturn the election. They really put that out, you know.
Yeah, right. And apparently they need to, because one of their own, General Michael Flynn, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, is one of the main advocates, or was one of the main advocates for using military intervention.
Well, you know, Obama warned Trump not to employ Flynn at any level, saying this guy is dangerous and unstable.
The guy has gotten kookier and kookier over
Yeah.
the years, and yet he has tremendous pull in the QAnon circles and also in far right circles.
Of course he does.
Which you would think would be disqualifying, totally disqualifying, but no, he's got more pull than ever in some corners.
Well, that makes you a mainstream Republican these days.
Yeah, but the story doesn't end there, because although Giuliani talked Trump out of using the military, Giuliani then suggested using the Department of Homeland Security instead.
Well, there you go. That's less insane.
So Giuliani, I guess he advocated against using the military, but he was all for using the Department of Homeland Security. But the Homeland Security shot down that idea. They refused to do that. And also the Justice Department under Attorney General Barr refused to get involved.
Yep. And then Barr, I think, resigned as a result.
Yes, that's right. So that's where we stand with Trump and his machinations to overturn the election.
Yep. And like you said, the point is the only people that care are the people that hate him already. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. But I care. I listen to quite a few podcasts and channels that are pretty much just nonstop hating Trump. And I find it interesting, but you know, I'm aware that there's a bunch of people on the other side that they're not getting convinced by any of this.
Well, not only they're not convinced, but I think even more troubling is all the people, the common good Americans in the middle who are independents, are not really very interested.
I heard a focus group, and they had a bunch of people in the middle. They carefully chose people who had voted for Obama and then Trump. So they're really in the middle. They voted like half Democrat and half Republican. And all of them said they couldn't care less about January 6th. This doesn't matter at all. I just want them to talk about opening schools and the economy or something.
Yeah. I think
a lot of
that's
things
true
for them.
for most voters, is that they're most interested in the economy.
Yeah. Well, under normal circumstances, I would say that's logical, but we're about to end the democracy, and that bothers me. But I guess I'm one of these eggheads full of theoretical complaints, you know.
No, this is where American public education has failed. Civics education has totally failed.
Yeah, it seems, well, there wasn't any civics education when I went to school. All there was something called social studies, which consisted of memorizing maps of Central America and naming all the cities.
Yeah.
There was nothing about the government or the Senate or Congress, at least not that I remember. Of course, I didn't do very well. Anyway, so I got a couple from Violet Blue's Pandemic Roundup, which is fantastic and everybody should read it. But anyway, it's depressing as hell. It always is. So Omicron does not confer any immunity on the people that get it. You can just get it again, like within 30 days. So it's not going to create herd immunity. And she said, we need to talk about what the medical consequences will be of people who get COVID like 10 or 20 times, which apparently is possible. And no one, of course, knows what that would do, but it's not likely to be good. And another study came out to see if this new 5-day isolation is right. And he said, hell no. Not only that, people who get infected are spreading it 2 days after infection. They previously thought it was 5. So you totally don't have enough time to tell you're sick or take a test or anything. And after 5 days, people are still shedding virus like crazy. And even after 10 days, they're still shedding virus like crazy. So this 5-day isolation is basically the same as just saying, well, just let everybody go out and infect everybody else because who cares? And that does seem to be the result. And I thought, like a lot of people, I thought Omicron might be the end of this because all the unvaccinated will catch Omicron and then they'll have natural immunity, but apparently not.
No, and we knew people could recatch it before. I mean, early on in this, and
Well, but like the flu, after 6 months or a year, maybe, but not like within a couple of weeks, you catch it again. Like
no, no, I don't think. I hadn't seen anything about catching it again within a couple weeks, but I did think it was really weird. I do think that the just go back to work after 5 days was pretty weird, especially like even if you still have symptoms. And I also thought it was bizarre when I got it that Kaiser was telling members, oh, don't come in for a PCR test. If you've got it and you figured it out on a home antigen test, just stay home. And I'm like, how are they, with this advice, how are they keeping track with the actual number of cases? Oh, wait, they're not.
Oh, no, nobody keeps track of cases. Most people never get tested. That's why I wondered from the beginning why they always quote the positivity rate as the main measure, but that's the point. Of the people who do get tested, you say how many of them are positive, and then you extrapolate that to the community. That's why, of course, in America, I'm sure 90% of the cases never even get tested. You can't get the tests anyway.
Supposedly I signed up for the 4 free tests you can get from the from the government through the postal service. Supposedly they're arriving today, so we'll see.
Well, that's something, I guess. All right. Pardon me. So Liz has an anti-vax protest.
So folks have been saying, it was funny, I just had a conversation about this with somebody yesterday, and they said, oh, the mainstream media is not covering this. And I thought, boy, I've seen it everywhere this week. There has been a protest happening in Ottawa by Canadian truckers who have been protesting against COVID vaccine requirements. And interesting, my couple of stories about this week are pretty interesting because it reminded me of the Trump inauguration when they filled in all the blank spots on the mall with fake crowds, because sort of the same deal's been happening in Ottawa, where the numbers of the truckers showing up have been grossly misrepresented, and they're much smaller than what has been previously reported. And what's pretty interesting about this is there's all kinds of distortion that's been applied to this. And one of these stories refers to a miscaptioned photo, a misattributed photo of a parade of Amish horse and buggies. And it was captioned as the Amish showing up in support of the truckers, and saying they showed up with a full barbecue supper for 800 people. But the mean Winnipeg police wouldn't let them stop, so they made them pack up their made them pack up their BBQ in their buggies and head on down the line. All that is lies. Actually, it's
that raises a question which I never thought of. Are the Amish anti-vax? They kind of reject technology, so maybe they are actually. I don't know.
I don't know, but what this photo was that was misrepresented was really a line of folks going to church.
Yeah,
which makes a lot more sense than but I think it's very interesting the way that these stories and the information is being manipulated, even coming from a country like Canada, which you would assume to be maybe not as crazy as the US, but it's totally just as crazy.
Well, I'm not sure they're as crazy as the US, but they have their crazies.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if I don't know if they are anti-vax or not. Supposedly, so and I would guess that it depends on your sect. I mean, there's not just one flavor of Amish with one level of
Right.
conservative.
That's true.
It's all, there's a whole spectrum,
Yeah.
from Mennonites that may as well be secular folks to all the way to extreme conservative old order Amish. And I would guess that vaccine adoption varies between congregations and flavors of Amish.
Well, I was pretty surprised, like a couple hundred years ago when I went to grad school, there was a guy in my physics program who was a Mennonite. And I'm like, what? He was getting his PhD in physics right along with me. So he was one of the less orthodox versions, I guess.
Yeah, and so I mean, I think it just depends, but I mean, at the same time, I would think that making a vaccine mandate for truckers doesn't make a ton of sense. They spend 95% of their time alone.
Well, I was just reading how a airplane full of Mormon missionaries brought COVID into the last little nation that didn't have it.
Wow, that makes sense.
I would think truckers would do the same thing. Like one trucker comes in from like New York City and he's got COVID.
Maybe, I mean, except I don't think that your truckers are sitting around preaching to the villagers,
Well, no, but they go eat at the diner and maybe they go to the bar afterwards. I mean, it could happen.
True. But I do think that maybe some of these vaccine mandates are a little bit overzealous and ultimately counterproductive, because you'll have people that will resist just because there's a mandate. I mean, they were talking about whether they needed to pass a vaccine mandate for a job that I have that's 100% online.
Yeah.
And and at one, some folks made it into like a political thing, like we have to do it so we can to make a political statement.
Yeah, well, of course, I'm working for military contractors. They just said, here's the deal. You either send in a vaccine card in the next 2 weeks or we will take that as resignation. Because and I was running the company, I'd say the same thing. Look, these people work on military projects. I just want 100% of everyone vaccinated so I never have to worry about it again.
Right. And the other side of that coin is I do get that, from a employer perspective, when you need to consider your staffing,
yeah,
it can be problematic if your staff is getting COVID every 5 minutes. Then again, you can still get it despite being vaccinated and boosted.
Yes, that's a problem. And of course, and I think the vaccine mandates are kind of worthless when you have like 30% of the people that don't obey them, which is what we have.
Right.
Then you're just fooling yourself. Like, I watch that Republican woman from Alaska, Sarah Palin, just going out to dinner after she knows she's positive. And I said, some people will get mad about that, but the fact is, that restaurant contains 10 other people that are positive going out to dinner.
Well, and
I'm
wondering too if there's how we're coming along on alternate ways to handle it. Treatments for the post-infection treatments, or
well, they don't have enough of the pills, but in New York City, the new mayor has a stockpile of the pills and he will deliver it to your home if you pass positive.
Wow.
But there aren't enough of them, but that's what you need. They ought to have, somebody come to your door, take this right now.
Well, and the other problem is that a lot of folks can't afford to take off of work once they get infected. There's no pay. So how many people, especially now, I mean, there's so many people living paycheck to paycheck where they can't afford to take 10 days off.
Other countries have like mandatory sick leave.
Yeah.
And we should have that. And when this all started 2 years ago, I said, well, we'll at least get socialized medicine out of this.
That's what I said too.
And we're not even getting that. It's like, The
No,
American healthcare system is a disgrace, and we're just not doing anything about it.
no. And I thought this would be the push, but it's not.
But you know, if you have a job in California, you can get Kaiser, which is basically socialized medicine, and I'm very happy with it. So I know you're not. About half the people I know hate Kaiser, the other half love it. I'm in the second camp. Yeah, I've
I
had
think
nothing.
they're good for major stuff.
Yeah.
If you have a real serious problem, they're good for that.
That's
The
what I've heard. I've
Day
heard the
to day,
exact.
not so much.
No, I've heard the exact opposite. Like they're great if you're healthy and you just need everyday stuff. But if you have a big thing, that's where Kaiser isn't the best.
Well, they saved my life when I had cancer, and one of my friends needed serious back surgery that sounded like what they did to Wolverine, and that worked too. So they can do some big stuff right too.
Yep.
But of course, every hospital, I'm sure there's failures that are madder than hell. I don't know. I'm pretty happy with them. Main thing I like is they're polite and efficient. They don't make me wait long because I'm sort of grouchy, and I would probably skip routine things if they made it irritating, and they really make it pleasant, which I appreciate.
My thing about Kaiser is that I've tried to work in the medical, just having regular medical insurance before, and it's a confusing mess. I don't know who to go to, what's paid, what's not paid.
Yeah.
How do I even get to see like doctor in the first place? But if you're just at Kaiser, you just go to Kaiser, you tell them what's going on. And it's just so easy.
It's just like socialized medicine. You just walk in, they take care of you. They either charge you nothing or $10. You don't have to wait very long. It's so nice. Yeah. Anyway, so this next story, I'm glad you put it on your list, because the first thing I thought of was Kaitlyn when I saw this story. One person took down all of North Korea. And for some reason, the first thing I thought is, I wonder what Kaitlyn's been up to. So,
okay, so I swear this was not me. Lad Bible. I've never heard this website before, but ladbible.com has an article written by Tom Wood talking about how this person, quote unquote, in his pajamas, takes down the entire internet of North Korea through a DDoS attack. And essentially, what I understand is that North Korea attacked his personal network where he keeps a bunch of exploits or hacking tools or something. And he got pissed and he went to the FBI, and the FBI is like, dude, this is a nation state. We can't do anything about this. So this individual decides to take down the entire internet of North Korea, which admittedly isn't much, just through a DDoS attack. By the way, so most people in North Korea are not allowed on the internet.
right.
The internet is only for sort of high-ranking officials or people who need it, the official state hackers, those types of people. So they don't have much of an internet infrastructure, and what they do have, it's not very impressive. So this one person was able to take down all of North Korea's internet.
Well, he said they had old vulnerable versions of stuff on their routers and such.
Yeah, exactly. So, but like I said, this was the DDoS attack. So it wasn't like he was hacking in and getting access to all their stuff and taking it down. He was just basically flooding them and, slow loris attack, stuff like that. Basically, yeah, turned off their internet. This is a big problem because, of course, this becomes a big political, kerfuffle. What do you do when it looks like your country is attacking another country, but it's really just an individual?
Well, the thing that motivated him is the social engineering attack.
Yeah.
Which came out about a year ago, where they targeted researchers with like a fake request. Will you please look at this malware sample? And it's a backdoor.
Yeah. I mean, I think I had something very similar going on about a week or two ago.
I think I saw the original one. They sent it to like all kinds of researchers. Yeah.
And again, I mean, if this attack really only affects government officials, it's not like it's not like your standard everyday citizen can go buy a computer and get on the internet. I mean, they even ban smartphones. Like, you're not allowed to have a phone that gets on the internet in Korea.
Well, when China hacks us, the US government, and China always says, that's not the official government, that's just random criminals in China doing it. And the US government says, well, it is your duty to stop your criminals from attacking other nations. So, we can't really just be, letting random idiots attack North Korea from here. It's kind of a violation to police our own people.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. Like, it's one thing if the United States looked the other way and sort of wink, wink, nod, nod, okay, take down North Korea. But the US government had no idea what was going on with North Korea. And they thought like maybe something very serious was happening. It became a diplomatic issue. They thought maybe North Korea was up to something, turning off the internet before a, big, nuclear test or something like that. So, I mean, this really was not the United States. It's just a person in it just doing his own thing. And it just creates so many problems when you go off and attack another state.
So kids, don't go starting a war. It might sound like fun, but it's not so nice.
It is, just because North Korea, tried to hack into your personal stash of hacking tools, it's not a good idea to then start a nuclear war and drag the entire world in with you on this, with your drama. Anyway, so I'm pretty sure this person is going to get into a lot of trouble. I hope. You don't. This is why hacking back is generally not a great idea, especially when it's against an entire nation.
You want to leave hacking back to the US military.
Yes.
They're the ones that are authorized to hack back.
Yes.
All right. And so Alan has got anomalous health incidents, whatever those are.
Well, this has to do with the so-called Havana Syndrome.
That thing.
American diplomats, starting in Havana, Cuba, but now all over the world, have been attacked by mysterious, well, we don't know what, but at any rate, they've suffered often very severe neurological consequences as a result. In some cases, people have been unable to work and have had to retire. And it's been going on for several years now, but for quite some time was not taken seriously, even by the State Department. But finally, the US intelligence community has convened a proper panel with a number of experts, and they've looked into these incidents, what they're terming AHIs, anomalous health incidents, and they've come to some very important conclusions. So just to summarize their findings, they first of all established that AHIs are real. So contrary to some of the earlier denials in government, these events really are happening, and they're not psychosocial in nature. So people aren't just having mass delusions. They also concluded that there are no known explanations for what are going on, and they looked at a number of possible different weapons that could be used this way, such as ionizing radiation or chemical and biological agents, infrasound, audible sound, bulk heating from electromagnetic energy. And they concluded that none of those can really explain the core symptoms that have been suffered. The one possible phenomenon that can explain this is ultrasound. Ultrasound over short distances, not long distances, but short distances. And they acknowledge that there's much research that needs to be done, and that there really isn't a lot of knowledge on how this works. But they did cite that researchers, presumably academic researchers, have been engaged in ultrasound studies and have accidentally pointed devices at themselves and experienced similar symptoms as the diplomats. So that, among other factors, led this panel to believe in something called ultrasound sickness as being the cause for the Havana Syndrome.
So could we make like an ultrasound ray gun and go zapping people with it?
That's exactly the idea, yes.
But can't ultrasound also be used for like spying, like seeing what someone's carrying, if someone's carrying a weapon or documents?
Oh, I hope not.
Well,
Well,
I
I
guess
mean, maybe it is, but I hope it's not being used that way.
Well, I suppose you could probably use a lower amount of it to
Maybe
look
so,
than you need
yeah.
to like rattle the brain, but who knows?
Yeah.
I read another article that said it was like directed radio frequency energy from a handheld portable device. And I said, that sounds totally bogus. Ultrasound sounds far more plausible.
Well, there was one incident in which, and I mentioned this on the podcast before, in which there was a State Department employee or Defense Department employee who was just walking down the street in DC, and she noticed a suspicious van following her. And then all of a sudden she was struck by this terrible, debilitating condition. And it seemed like it was emanating from the van.
Well, you totally could have a dish of ultrasound, focused ultrasound. It would be pretty easy. It would just take a dish a few feet across, I think. I know that's
Right,
how
right.
the big ears work, where you can listen to sound like hundreds of yards away.
Right, but for whatever reason, the experts on this panel concluded that had to be rather short distances. So
Okay.
you can't do it over large distances, only short distances.
So we could have some kind of ray gun and stick it in a drone and fly over and zap people.
Yes, if the drone is very close to people.
Neat.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds great. It sounds like a phaser from Star Trek where you can just make someone really sick and they fall over. The
Exactly.
problem is the lingering effects make it sort of a war crime.
Well, you need to refine it a bit. Besides, I always wondered if that phaser is really harmless, Anyway, all right. So this I thought was pretty fun. In Mississippi, they just banned the teaching of critical race theory, and there's a student and at Ole Miss, the big university there, named Brittany Murphy, and she was just about to take the critical race theory class. They saw it in book, and everyone said, she said, I'm going to take this class and see what's in there. And all her friends and family said, oh my God, they're a bunch of lunatic propagandists. She said, well, I don't know, but I'm going to take the class and see. And she said, this is an awesome class. This is great. We talk about like what words offend people and how the laws are and how it's like living in America. And everybody should take this class. You shouldn't ban it. This is wonderful. And then she actually wrote to all the Congress people that were banning critical race theory. And she said, this is probably the end of my political career, but I'm going to tell them, stop banning critical race theory. This stuff is great. So it's a really fun article to read. And,
Yeah.
I had the same reaction. There's a whole lot of Black history at City College. And I went to some seminars and I saw this and I said, wow, this stuff is actually really interesting and really important. I didn't know it was so great until I saw some lectures. It really is very interesting stuff.
Yeah, and critical race theory in particular is so weird that I won't say it's weird, because we all know why racists don't like critical race theory, because it has critical in the name and it teaches people that the way America treats people of color is not particularly good, which should not be a controversial statement, but hey, racists are going to be racist, right?
Well, and all the people that hate it have not done it. They haven't been to the class.
Right. They don't know what it is. And the thing is it's like, so critical race theory is really more of a legal study, looking at institutional racism. Now, institutional racism is fairly broadly taught in college level classes. Critical race theory is not, because it's, like I said, much more of a legal, looking at specifically the legal consequences of institutionalized racism.
Yeah.
But institutionalized racism is a very important topic that, we were talking about the importance of having civics education in America, and institutionalized racism is a very important civics topic that every American should be versed in. It is very interesting to see how Americans like to pretend like America is not racist.
Yeah.
But it's totally racist. And then the way we do it is we just sort of enshrine laws that make sure that, we can't have slaves, but if you break the law, you go to jail, and now you're a slave because you're, working for the state for free, essentially, and then we target these laws towards people of color, and then say, well, we're not like saying that, like, we're not trying to like force people of color into slavery. It's just that people of color break the law more often and therefore end up in jail with harsher sentences. There's nothing we can do about that. It's no one's fault. It's totally someone's fault. It is totally the way the system is designed. It's designed to funnel people of color, into jails, into positions of less power and less agency. And so we totally have these systems, but like I said, critical race theory is very interested in legal consequences of that, which is very fascinating. I saw a few lectures by the people that came up with critical race theory, and they are just like, it's like standard, college lecturer intellectual types. very interesting. And, you know, they're not angry. They're not like, you know, we're going to destroy America. No, they're just like, here's the legal consequences of what we're doing. And, you know, we looked at all the law cases and all the stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, it's really interesting stuff. And so the people that rally against critical race theory really have no idea what it is. And it is interesting.
Yeah, it reminds me of something I heard yesterday. They went up to Ron DeSantis and asked him, the Nazis are like having a rally. Will you condemn that? And he wouldn't. He spent 2 minutes saying, well, you know, you're just trying to trick me into saying something foolish, and I'm not going to fall into that trap. But just like when they asked Trump to condemn them, that's his base, and he knows it.
Yeah.
And he's pandering to the Nazis, just like Trump did.
Yeah, that's a huge problem. I mean, this used to be a non-issue in American politics. Nazis are bad. It's like a total win. Like
they threw King out of the Republican Party for being a Nazi. It used to not be that nobody serious would give you the time of day if you were a Nazi, just like 5 years ago.
Yes. Yeah, we really need to step up our anti-Nazi campaigning and make sure that all the politicians.
We're regressing on that. I mean, I was just noticing that I was looking at the laundry list of banned books in Texas, and you know, there are all these books on there that were kind of surprising to me to appear on the list. But you know what isn't on the list is Mein Kampf.
Well, yeah.
That's okay for the children to read, apparently.
Well, yeah.
But we need to we need to be objective when we're talking about the Nazis. We can't say they're people of low moral character. I mean, to be in the same spirit of what we were saying about critical race theory, I must admit I've never read Mein Kampf. I really don't know what's in there. I've only heard rumors about it from the outside.
I mean, yeah, I mean, fair enough. I have no interest in reading Mein Kampf either.
Well, I haven't done it, but from what I've heard, it's not very good.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it kind of blows my mind though that they're banning classics like To Kill a Mockingbird, and you know, I think I saw on one banned book list was Fahrenheit 451, and I'm like, okay, clearly these people have never heard of irony for that book to end up on the list.
I know, yeah.
But I mean, some of these just don't make any sense at all to be on the banned list.
Of course not.
They do make sense if you are if you're supporting a certain type of politics that has maybe not embraced, you know, racism, but at least wink, wink, nod, nods, you know, its existence, and, you know, tries to court their vote. You know, these books are designed specifically to get people on that sort of fence area to really think about what they're supporting. So, like, for example, Mouse is a book that got banned, and that was really supposed to teach people how people fell into the Nazi propaganda to begin with.
I was thinking about Mouse exactly as a great example. And one thing that I thought was really cool is that a guy who runs a comic book store in San Jose sent out like hundreds of copies of Mouse to places where it's been banned, which I thought is great.
And it rose to like the number 2 and number 3 Amazon bestseller immediately. Everybody bought it.
Here's what I don't get. Okay, well, you know, the same folks that are calling for these book bans tend to overlap with the population that's up in arms about Joe Rogan being canceled or saying that, you know, we should. That freedom of, you know, hate speech should be protected. So I'm like, where's the cognitive disconnect between saying that we can't cancel Nazis and they should be allowed to be on whatever, you know, on social media or on the radio, which I agree with. Actually, I do think that they should be allowed to spew and out themselves to the public, but I don't agree with the banned books, but I don't see how you can reconcile those two positions.
Well, logical consistency is not much importance in politics.
I mean, the thing is that Twitter's a private platform. The internet is not. So no, the internet should not ban people from being Nazis or saying things that are, you know, in line with Nazi rhetoric. But Twitter has every right to
Yeah.
police their own platform.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like a bar can throw you out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if Nazis want to create their own website and out themselves to everyone that they're Nazis, I say go for it, dude.
Yeah.
And
Just
then-
don't do it on where I'm where I'm posting things about InfoSec.
Yeah. Right. And so Liz has got Mac malware.
Yeah, so this is pretty interesting. This Mac malware that's been circulating for the past year and a half, probably, at least since November of 2020, has been circulating and improving. The developers are pushing out updates and feature ads, which is pretty interesting. But this there's a really good article in Ars Technica about this. The malware is named Update Agent, and essentially it establishes a persistent backdoor on your system. And this is a nice little malware analysis article. I always enjoy these when they actually break down the means of infection and the functionality of the malware. It's pretty awesome. So be careful. If update agent,
That's the part that bothers me. It doesn't tell me how I can find out if I'm infected. What is this be careful part? How do I know?
well, you know, you're gonna have to go and do some research into your system. It doesn't tell you about that, and I do wish that it did. But especially considering one of the lines in this is that it masquerades as legitimate software such as video apps or support agents that spread through. So you don't even know if you're necessarily getting it. You think you're downloading a client or some little trivial app, and you get this nasty. So be careful about installing stuff.
Well, you know, I don't have antivirus on this Mac, and it occurs to me maybe I should be scanning it with something, but I don't even know what I would use.
Well, yeah, I'm sure I don't use it. There are various utilities you can get for it, but one way you can avoid getting infected in the first place is clicking on sketchy software updates while you're surfing the internet. I mean, get all of your software updates directly from Apple. If you're going to install utilities, install them from the App Store.
Well, yeah, but okay. Well, I think it'd be nice to find a good Mac malware scanner
It would.
and
It
tell
would be
people which one to
handy.
use. I should look into it. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, good. And then Kaitlyn has got people getting hacked.
Yeah, people are getting hacked as usual, but this time it's kind of sad. Rest of the world.org has an article written by Victoria Elliott talking about how one of the biggest targets, or I should say open targets for hackers are people who they're humanitarian organizations, so nonprofits.
Yeah.
They don't really have the budget, or most don't have the budget, to keep a IT security team, well funded, and to keep their infrastructure well protected. So that makes them prime targets for hackers. And I think this really gets to a big problem we have in cybersecurity, is that we really try to tell companies to protect themselves, which is not every company can do that. Not every company is Microsoft. Not every company is Twitter, who they can afford a giant army of hackers to defend their network. A lot of organizations are things like humanitarian organizations, which absolutely do wonderful work, which we want to support, but they don't have the money to buy a huge IT security department. And as a result, they're just getting hacked left and right. And so we really need to change our mindset about how we think about cybersecurity in our country. And I would argue that we really need to put more effort into agencies like CISA to not only, go after the bad guys, but to make sure that all of our smaller organizations have some sort of protection, right? That, that because like I said, they don't have the money to do this themselves. And
you want socialized cybersecurity, like socialized medicine.
pretty much, I think that's really the only solution that would work. Unless we were to, we could technically just say, here's money, just for every organization to hire, a cyber team.
That would be
Cybersecurity
great.
team.
More jobs for our students.
Yeah, more jobs. That would be fantastic. Unfortunately, that would be highly expensive.
Yeah.
And subject to lots of pocketing of said money, as we've seen with like the PPP loans and stuff like that, where if we give just money out for a specific cause, the rich people with lawyers will figure out how they justify themselves as being part of that cause, take most of the money and pocket it for themselves.
Where would you get this cynical attitude?
Yeah, I know. And so oftentimes I think, just giving money is the best solution. Like if people are poor, studies have shown that just giving them money is probably the best solution to their poverty. But for things like cybersecurity, really having a centralized infrastructure for defending small organizations and individuals from cyber attacks, I think is really the way to go, because we can't have things like the Red Cross and Doctors Without Borders, getting taken down by scammers and miscellaneous hackers that just see them as easy targets.
Yeah. All right. It reminds me of years ago, like around 2012, when the big hack attack, PBS got hacked. And I actually contacted, I think, Joshua Grossman or somebody. He actually helped them, because it was the same thing. They got no money. Of course, they got hacked, and somebody needed to volunteer some time.
Yeah, but the thing is, in cybersecurity, having time to volunteer is difficult. We're all pretty overworked. So.
Yep. All right. And so Alan has got electronics inventories.
And computer inventories, and they're both up. Channel inventories for both are up, way up. In the case of computers, they're up 55%. Consumer electronics up 29% versus pre-pandemic levels.
So does that mean the chip shortage is over?
Well, this is the part I don't understand. And let me back up by saying that this information is from a fellow by the name of Gavin Baker, who is managing partner and CIO at Atreides Management, formerly of Fidelity. So it's a finance guy. Hopefully he knows what he's talking about. I don't know the source of his information, but he seems like a somewhat reliable source of information nevertheless. Yeah, it's not entirely clear how, if there's a silicon shortage, there can suddenly be so many spare computers and electronics sitting on the shelves at retailers, and that's what channel inventory means. It's
unless maybe they're
stuff
like
on the shelves.
unpopular products that people don't want or something.
Well, I suppose it's possible, but keep in mind that inventory levels have generally been very, very low since the pandemic started, because of high demand, for one thing, and also then because of the shortage of silicon. And it appears that now there is both low demand and enough silicon to go around to actually get these products out there and on retailer shelves.
I wonder about cars, because I've heard there's a huge problem making cars because they can't get the chips.
Right. And I wonder if that too is subsiding.
Yeah. Well, they could buy the computers and take the chips out of the computers and put them in the cars. But
I suppose that's one way to go about it. And, it would not be unreasonable to assume that this is not universally true through all different sectors, because the computer manufacturers, being the biggest customers, are usually the first in line. And so they have first dibs on any production.
oh, that makes sense.
So they've gotten their production now, and they've shipped it out to retailers, and now people aren't buying the stuff. So we can only hope that this means that prices will come down. Maybe not for GPUs, graphics cards, but at least for your general purpose computing devices and electronics, stuff will be getting cheaper soon.
Well, that would be nice.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've got an exciting business opportunity for people. So the Apple AirTags will warn you if someone is stalking you by appearing on your phone and by turning on a beep to beep you. So people are buying them and taking them apart and unplugging the speaker and selling them so you can use them to stalk people. So this is a business opportunity. You can improve these AirTags to make them more convenient for criminals and then sell them. And that's going on. It occurred to me probably very easy to take it apart and just cut the wire so the speaker doesn't beep. Anyway, and this is why, the EFF and Ava Galperin are always really, really mad about these AirTag things. They're like sort of custom made for stalkers and being used for that. Of course, they're also being used for their intended purpose, like to find your lost laptop and luggage and stuff. But the problem is an easy electronic bug like the cops have, that everybody has a whole lot of abuses too. And nobody seems to have any clue how to really do anything about all the abuses of these things. And Liz has got repairing cars.
So this is a pretty interesting story in Wired this week about, and the article's entitled "A Fight Over the Right to Repair Cars Turns Ugly," and it refers to a well-meaning, well-intentioned law that passed in Massachusetts that was intended to actually be a right to repair legislation that was intended to benefit consumers, but it sort of has had the opposite effect. And, we've seen this so many times before when legislators who don't understand technology write laws that govern that technology. Well, this is a prime example. Essentially, these legislators determined that the way to ensure that folks would have an ability to repair their vehicles was to mandate that all the car makers implement an open source standardized system of software and telematics for all vehicles.
Well, that sounds good.
It sounds great on paper. It's a wonderful idea, but to expect all of the automakers to be able to do this effectively and safely within a few months is wildly implausible. And furthermore, the other part that's a major problem here is that these systems control stuff like brakes. You don't really want that out there and available to everyone as part of open source. So because you could have some major security problems and safety problems with that. There's got to be some separation of concerns. And again, yes, it's great that they are pushing for this, but what it has happened in actual effect is that automakers unable to comply with this law have been disabling features on cars in Massachusetts. For example, one of the stories quoted in this article is a couple that bought a Subaru right before this law was rolled out. Right before around the same time, and when it rolled out, it disabled the remote start on their car. When you're living in the Northeast, who is having a blizzard right now, you really want that remote start so you can start your car. And sometimes I remember being frozen out of the car and having to try to unfreeze the door locks before you could even get in it. And if you buy a car with that feature, you're probably really looking forward to using it. So, I think it's kind of messed up that automakers can just shut down your functionality or shut off your car. I think there's going to be a market for dumb cars in the future, to the point that legislation will allow them on the road, because that's a whole nother issue. But pretty interesting to see the way that well-intentioned right to repair legislation can backfire.
Yeah, I wonder sometimes how dumb my car is. And I got this ad for Metro Mile, which is sort of dystopian. You can get this cheap insurance by plugging a gadget that will track everything you do and report it to them so they can
Yep.
verify that you're like not speeding or something,
Yep.
which sounds kind of insane and dystopian. But anyway, my car is so old, the gadget won't work in it
Yeah.
anyway. So anyway, all right. Well, I think that's it. And what is it? Friday. So we'll be back on Tuesday. See if I can find the right button.